At 35,000 feet over the Atlantic, a wealthy tech mogul clutches his pregnant wife's hand as she gasps for air her life. And unborn child slipping away with each breath, the crew calls for a Dr. Boutno. One answers until a teenage black boy in economy stands up, calm, focused, and ignored by everyone moments before, steps forward with one request: let him treat what the passengers don't know. Istis. Kid isn't just smart. He's about Tosavi 2 lives and change all 3 forever before we dive in this. Story lead us know where you watching from. We love Edo. Hear your thoughts. 35. 0 feet above the Atlantic Ocean. Cabin lights had dimmed and most passengers had drifted into a quiet haze of sleep or silence, but something wasn't right in seat. Lauren Mallister shifted uncomfortably, her hand presat against her chest, her breathing had grown shallow, fast, uneven. She tried toss peak, but only managed to whisper, "Evan, I can't breathe." Her husband, Evan Collister, turned instantly, alarm flashing across his face. "What, Lauren?" he asked, rising so quickly from his reclined seat that his champagne glass tipped onto the floor across the aisle. A flight attendant named Monica rushed over, her face composed but tight with concern. Lauren's skin had gone pale, her lips tinted blue. "Is there a doctor on board?" Monica called out, urgency rising in her voice. Another attendant emerged with a bright orange medical kit. "We need medical assistance immediately." She repeated down the aisle and the back off the plane in seat 32B. 17-year-old Noah Benson sat bolt upright. He'd been half asleep, headphones still playing Quiet instrumental music from his studio playlist, but those words, trouble breathing, pregnant medical emergency, snapped him into full alert. His mind dressed lowered. Chest pressure, pale, skin-labored breaths. He'd seen this before when his grandmother, Mrs. Levern Benson, nearly collapsed on their apartment floor in Oakland. That time, the paramedic said it was a pulmonary embolism, that woman up front. The symptoms sounded the same. Noah looked around, nobody else was moving, no one was standing up. Maybe a doctor was asleep or afraid to speak up, or maybe there wasn't tone. He turned to the attendant walking past. "His row, excuse me," he said. "I think Emmett know what's wrong." Woman barely glanced at him. "We need a licensed medical professional, please stay seated," she said automatically and kept moving. Noah's heart pounded. He knew what he looked like: a skinny black kite in a hoodie. Jeans slightly too short, a backpack between his feet, but he also knew what a pulmonary embolism looked like. "Ma'am," he called louder. "Please, pregnancy increases the risk 5-fold." As she had leg swelling, as she short off breath between every word that made her pause, she turned and stared. He stood up. "Me. Grandmother had the same thing last year. I cared for her myself. It could be clot. It's dangerous. She needs oxygeno and maybe aspirin." The attendant Tisa did then. Another voice crackled over the intercom. "Cabin crew to first class now." That was enough. The woman aided tightly. "Come with me," she said. "Boutif, you're wrong, I pray." "I'm not." Noah answered as he followed her past the sleeping Rosehead's turned eyes. Followed some curious, some confused, a few looked skeptical. What was he doing who was head-a-walk toward first class like that? But Noah didn't look back. He remembered Wathas. Grandmother always said knowledge means nothing if you're too scared. Toss peek up. When they reached seat 2, Lauren was gasping now, the oxygen mask not helping. Evan was pale himself, holding her hand helpless. "Who is this?" he asked sharply when Noah approached. "Head, where's the doctor?" Monica spoke up. "Thuris no doctor, this young man Saish may know what's going on." Evan's eyes narrowed. "This is my wife." He sought, his voice cracking. "She's pregnant. I didn't want guesses." Noah met his gaze calmly. "Sir, I understand. But I've seen this before. Her symptoms match pulmonary embolism, a clot in her lung, and at 28 weeks, pregnancies, high risk. She needs the clot-stopped oxygen. Will help an aspirin if she can take it." Monica opened the kitway. "Have aspirin." Lauren's head turned slightly toward Noah. "My left leg, it was swollen yesterday. I thought it was normal." Noah nodded. "That's where it likely started." Evan looked between Themis. Breathing grew shallow, not from illness, but from fear for a moment. Hefro's the cabin noise seemed to fidento the background. All he could see was Lauren's pale face, her lips tinged blue, her chest rising in panicked gasps. Her eyes found his, not wild, not frantic, just pleading, silently begging for help. Hewent, a doctor. He wanted certainty, but no one was coming. He turned to Duh. Noah Thayboy didn't waver. There was no arrogant sign. His eyes just urgency, just purpose, heaven's grip. On Lauren's hand tightened, then loosened a beat. Pasado what he says. Evan whispered finnily, his voice thick, please. In in-thought moment, the lines between first class and economy disappeared there where no designer suits or worn hoodies. Nestatus, just a pregnant woman fighting to breathe, and a teenager doing everything could to help her, and in that narrow whale between luxury and desperation something began to shift, though none of them realized it just yet. The scene inside first class was tense. Nearly frozen, Lauren Callister lay reclined, thighs fluttering her breathing. Shallow on fast, a thin layer of sweat coated her forehead. Evan knelt beside her, Hishon still gripping hers, his face drawn and colorless moniker handed. Noah Thespirin, still unsure if she should be letting this teenager take over, but with no doctor on board, and the passenger Scondian worsening hesitation was no longer an option. She needs to chew it. Noah said, his voice calm but firm, intelligent to her bloodstream. Faster. Monica nodded and carefully slipped the table past Lauren's lips. Noah looked around quickly. We need to get her legs. Will evadant, loosen anything, tight shoes, belt chuli, anything. That might slow blood flow. Evan helped removing Lauren's shoesand, lifting her legs with the rolled-up blankets. Monica had brought the cabin around, then was quiet but not asleep anymore. Few heads peeked out from their pods, curious and concerned. One man across the aisle muttered, "They're letting a kid do this?" What? Another woman shook her head disapprovingly, but no one stepped in, no one offered more. They just watched Evan, heard the whispers to Onda's gaze flicked between Noah and the bystanders. Something hardened in his voice. How do you know any of this? Noah glanced up briefly but kept Hishon steady as he adjusted the oxygen mask over Lauren's face. Because my grandma had a clot like a this, because I learned what I needed to take care of her, because where I come from, we don't have doctors on speed dial. Thanser caught Evan off guard for Amamont. He had no reply. Noah didn't give him time to find one. She's stabilizing, but she still needs emergency care. This is temporary. Her heart rate is still high. We need to land. Monica had already notified the captain we're diverting to Frankfurt. She said quietly to Evanthiel, "Have a medical team waiting." No stayed close to Lauren, gently talking her through slow, deep breaths. "You're doing great," he whispered. "Help's on the way, just a little longer." Lauren looked at him, eyes glass of lips trembling, and nodded. Weekleven stared slowly, sitting back into his seat, watching this young man who didn't belong in first class, who wasn't supposed to know these things, taking control with steady hands and clear eyes. Didn't know what to say. Gratitude and shame tangled in his throat. The planet tilted slightly as it changed course, banking toward land in the cabin. Thelene, between confidence and panic, had thinned to nothing, but in the quiet corner of seat 2A, Noah held that linny for the first time. Evan didn't see a kid in a hoodie. He saw the person saving his family, and as the soft hum of Thengians continued as lights blinked quietly overhead, and flight attendants shisped into radios, one truth settled deeply over everyone in earshot. If Noah hadn't stood up, Lauren and the baby might not have survived. The landing lights flicked on. The captain's voice came through. "We'll be touching down in Frankfurt in 25 minutes. Medical team is in standby." Noah let out a slow breath. Lauren's color had started to return. The oxygen was helping. The aspirin was buying them time, but his hands were still clenched, his body still on high alert, and in the back of his mind, Henu, what this meant. Zurich was no longer within reach. The interview had flown across the ocean, forgone. But Ash glanced at Lauren. Still breathing, still holding on, he told himself what his grandmother always said, "Dummaments matter more than plans." And that moment wasn't over yet. The most difficult part was still to come. The plane touched down at Frankfurt International. Just before dawn, the sky still dark beyond the runway lights. Paramedics were already waiting at the Armac. The doors opened before the usual protocol, and Lauren Callister was scarfully lifted onto a stretcher. Evan, at her side, still clutching her hand. Noah stepped back, letting the professionals take over. He had done with could, but as they wheeled her down the narrow jet bridge, Lauren turned her head weakly toward him and whispered, "Thank you." Hours later, in the sterile efflorescent light of the hospital waiting room, Evan sat hunched over a foam cup of bitter vending machine coffee. It's barely touched, he had changed it into a sweatshirt the hospital provided, but still looked out of place, like Sumione. Who didn't belong in discomfort a cruise? The room Noah sat quietly, a stack of flashcards poking out of his backpack. In the chair beside him, the overhead. Toby played silently tuned to a local news station with German subtitles. Neither of them paid it any. Attention, a doctor emerged. With a clipboard in hand, Evan stood up instantly. Mr. Collister. The man nodded. Your wife is stable. The clot was confirmed in her left lung. She was very lucky. It was caught early. The aspirin, oxygen administered on board. Like a lift prevented a worse outcome. Evan exhaled shakily and sat back down, and the baby also stable heart rate. Has returned to normal? We'll continue monitoring, but things look good, the doctor offered. Her reassuring smile. She's asking for Yobeth that night. While Lauren rested in her hospital bed, Evan found himself walking alone down the long, sterile corridor. The lights overhead buzzed faintly, casting dull reflections across polished floor. He passed a man hunched in a wheelchair, wheeled gently by. Nurse, an older woman, stood outside a curtained room. Arms crossed, face carved with worry, the silence between. Beeps and footfalls felt heavy. Ivan paused. At a vending machine, watching a young boy press his face to the glass Asif, hoping something inside could fix what was happening behind closed doors. Sand. Then he remembered. Lauren's breath shallow, desperate, the helplessness in her eyes, and Noah's voice steady in the cows. If he hadn't listened, he turned away from the machine. Something had shifted. Inside him, not a realization, a reckoning. They didn't speak much on Thiwe. To the room, Evan still wasn't sure what to say to Noah. When they reached the hallway outside, Noah stopped. Ushold. Go in first, he said. Evan Tornetto, him no come with me. She asked for you inside. Lauren looked pale, but her eyes were alert. Her breathing, even monitors beeped softly beside her bed. You are? She said with a smile, reaching out. Noah approached slowly. I'm glad you're okay, ma'am, because of you. She said they told me what you did, that you stayed calm, that you saved us. No didn't know how to answer that, so hadn't he just nodded, then pulled a chair closer. You mentioned on the plane you were headed to an interview. No hesitated. Yeah, a medical program in Zurich, the Young Global Health. Scholarship only take 50 students from around the world. It's kind of a big deal, and the interview was today. Evan said, more a statement than a question. Noah nodded, again quieter. This time, what Evan's voice lowered. You knew you'd miss it when you stayed with her. Noah looked at him. It wasn't a decision, he said. She needed help. I couldn't walk away. Lauren looked at Boondum. And now, what do they allow? Makeup interview. Noah gave a small shake of his head. No, it's in person, only one shot. I'll apply again next year if I can, but I'll be 18. This was probably my only chance. Evan leaned back, absorbing that. The boy had risked everything, his future, his shot for a stranger. No press, no cameras. Just instinct and principle. Silence returned, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It was reflectively. Noah stood. I should probably let you rest. I'll get my flight rebooked in the morning and head back home. Lauren reached out again. Wait, you don't have Togo just yet. There's something we want, Tosk. Noah looked from her too. Evan's eyes. Noah saw the flicker off something. Knew not pity, not obligation, something else. A beginning. Whatever came next would start with a conversation, and that conversation was coming soon later. That morning, the hotel cafe was quiet. The breakfast rush already passed. Noah sat alone at a corner table, his notebook a pen, beside a lukewarm cup of coffee. Hugh and writing, just staring at the same sentence he'd started 15 minutes ago. His thoughts weren't on the page. They were still in that hospital room, still with Lauren's tired but grateful eyes, and Evan's unreadable expression. He looked up when the chair across from him slid back. Evan Callister sat down, dressed in yesterday's rumpled travel clothes, holding his own cup of coffee. I thought'd find you here, he said. Noah closed the notebook slowly. She doing okay? Better sleeping. They've got her on a full course of anticoagulants. Monitoring everything. Doctors say she'll carry to term if Charus. Evan paused, watching. Noah headled me to come talk to you. Noah stayed quiet. He didn't know what was coming. Given set his coffee down and leaned forward. Slightly, look, I don't know how to thank you what you did. There's no real way to measure that. He Took a breath, but I'd like to try. I have the means, if there's something you need. Want to help? Noah's jaw tensed. He'd expected this, maybe dreaded it. The offer "How much do you want" moment hellocked. Evan straight in thee. I don't want money, Evan. Didn't flinch then. What do you want, Noah? Took a breath, voice low. But clear my grandmammer's Laverne Benson. She raised me after me mom passed. She's got heart failure, COPD. And arthritis so bad she can't climb our stairs anymore. Our insurance barely covers. Inhalers, she's been waiting for months for a cardiologist because the local clinics. Ario overbooked. He leaned in a little Yowen to help me help her get her thocker she needs. That's more important than. Nietzsche. Evan sat back processing, though. He'd expected a scholarship requested job, even a college connection. But not this. Not someone asking for someone else. And if I got her in with a private cardiologist, covered all her expenses. He asked. Noah shook his head, slowly thought. Would help, sure. But she's not the only one. Our building's full of people like her, veterans. Retirees, folks who've worked their whole lives and now can't afford a ride to the pharmacy. There's a clinic nearby, but they're drowning one a doctor. For thousands, no transportation prag. No funding for specialty meds. Evan's face was unreadable now. He didn't speak. Noah continued. I'm not saying fixed system, but if you're serious, start be seeing it. Really seeing what people like my grandma live through just to serve. Evan looked down at his hands. For years, he donated to global medical missions, written large checks for projects in countries he'd never visited, but he had never once thought to ask what happened in neighborhoods 20 meters from his own. He looked back at Noah. Would make a difference. Noah didn't hesitate. Invest in a real health initiative where we live. Not charity partnership. Hire local. Include people from the community. Build trusts. Don't just put your name on a building. Put people in it who care. The words settled heavily on the table between them. Evan finally spoke. We're building a hospital in Ganneret. Now, it's a good project, but I've never considered doing anything like that in Oakland. Noah shrugged. Needs note about geography. It's about access onto O. You choose to see. Evan looked at him for a long moment. Something shifted behind his eyes. Not guilt. Not PT. Understanding. He nodded once. I'll think about that. Nowhere upped up his notebook again. But didn't open it. That's all I'm asking. And first time since they'd met. Evan smiled. Not polite, not formal. Just honesty. D like to meet your grandmother. Hesed quietly. Noah raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? Evan's smile widened. From what you've told me, she sounds like the kind of person who'd have a lot to say to a guy like me. And with that, the next step became clear, because their all conversation, the one that would change more than just two lives, was about to begin. A week later, a black town car pulled up in front of a narrow apartment building in East Oakland. The pont on the walls had faded, and a paper sign taped to the entrance read "Elevator out of order." Again, Evan Collister stepped out first, adjusting the collar of his jacket. He looked up at the building, then over at his wife Lauren. Followed carefully. Now in her third trimester, one hand resting on her belly, she smiled reassuringly at him. You're more nervous than I was in labor, she said quietly. That woman raised Noah. I want to make a good impression, Evan muttered at the top, offstairs. Noah was already waiting. Who waved them up, then reached out to help Lauren with the final steps. She exited. You came, he said. Made enough food for everyone in the building, probably. The hallway smelled licorice bread and stewed greens. Inside the apartment, everything was clean, and polished. Old photographs lined the walls. Black and white wedding portraits. School pictures. Faded graduation shots. In the center of the living room, sitting upright with oxygen tubing in her nose and a cane by her side, was Mrs. Laverne Benson. She wore a floral dress and a pearl necklace. Her hair was careful pinned, and her eyes were sharp. Do this here, the airplane people, she said, with a dry tone. Come in. Don't let the heat out. Evan stepped forward, sudden lyncher of himself. Mrs. Benson, thank you for having us. We brought a few things. Set them down. She interrupted Wavinga, hand toward the table without looking. Zid. Then tell me what exactly you plan to do for this neighborhood. And why should believe a man who flew in on a plane and thinks bandages fix broken systems? Evan blinked, then slowly hesed, and he told her about what Noah had said about the gaps he'd never noticed about. Wanting to build something lasting, not for recognition, but for service. About partnering with local doctors, funding transportation programs, offering free specialty care, and placing decision-making power in the hands of the community. Mrs. Benson listened without interruption. When he finished, she leaned back in her chair, examining him like adjudge. Deliberating sentence, then unexpectedly she smiled. "You're not as clueless as I expected. Still a bit green, but you're trying, that counts." No, hexled quietly in relief. Lauren laughed softly and reached for Mrs. Benson's hand. "ED also like to offer you full probate care, anything you need. Specialists, equipment, home visits." Moore's Benson's eyes didn't soften, but her voice did. "You're kind. But don't offer it because you feel guilty. Do it because a pool like me have worth, even if one ever save your life." "I know that now," Evan said simply later, as they toured neighborhood. Noah pointed out Thunderstaffed clinic, the pharmacy Thatterly carried what his grandmother needed, and the long bus route people took just to get their prescriptions funds. Said very little, but he listened. Within months, the Oakfield Health Initiative was announced, a community-run health center with full services, funded by the Callister Foundation, guided by local voices, and piloted with Noah Benson's direct input. He accepted the offer to serve as its youth advisor, Rycare, and received a full scholarship to Stanford's Preempt program in a hospital Acrostown. When Lauren gave birth to a healthy baby girl, the question of her name lingered. "I've been thinking about a name," Lauren said, her voice soft, one hand resting on the swaddle. "Evan looked at me too, but I get the feeling we're not thinking of the same one." Avern said. He paused. "You sure that's a lot to carry?" "She carried us." Lorena pled. "Not just me, not just the baby. Change something in you," to Evan considered. "That Laverne?" Callister. Lauren smiled. "That sounds right," even nodded. "Then that's her name." Mrs. Benson held her first, whispering, "Strong name, let's make sure she grows into it." As Evan watched the woman who had unseckled him green cradle, his daughter understood the change was complete, not just in his family, not just in Noah's future, but in himself. Because what Noah had asked for wasn't money, it wasn't status, it was dignity. And dignity, Evan now knew, waste only foundation worth building us. Thing on join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn in the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.